welcome to part 2 of our Q&A series as we discuss some special topics about the importance of therapy for victims of trauma. During our session in part 1, we talked a little bit about setting goals, grounding strategies, we defined the word trauma, and we hope to paint a better picture of what it looks like when getting started for therapy sessions at the Center for Violence Prevention. It is my pleasure to reintroduce Reagan Owens and Ebony LaFleur Jackson that are joining on this call again today. Thank you so much for being here. That being said, let's go ahead and start with question number 6. And this one's talking a little bit about the past affecting the present. So Ebony, how do you as a therapist recognize ways or moments during sessions when someone's past is still affecting them or how it led them into the situations that they're in today?
Once we kind of get past the initial portion of the therapy session and we kind of begin to get into treatment, I really began to look for patterns and perspectives. And, a lot of times as you kind of begin to get into treatment, you begin to offer new things and, new ways of thinking, the new part, right? And so when I began to see the clients begin to revert back or always, going back to the past, or I don't really see myself past this, or this is where I used to be, or I think I want this versus that. So that's my indicator to say, we may not be ready just yet, right? And so I look for a lot of the inability to really process what I'm trying to present to them. Is kind of like too big or too much, and so that's one of my indicators. Resistance, to treatment. Sometimes you'll see them come in at the beginning and they're like, yeah, I'm all for it. I'm here. But as we begin to get into the meat of the matter, they may say, I can't make it today, or I'm busy today, so you begin to kind of see the pushback in that as well. And so I think, or sometimes even just stuck, cognitively just stuck, right? And so I think we have to kind of, as therapists, begin to just remember that sometimes the trauma is so complex, is so traumatic that it takes time to undig something first before we try to plant, right? And so once I kind of see if I'm with a client and they're just not ready, then we have to do a little bit more digging. And sometimes I'll tell them, we got some more digging to do, right? We got a little bit more digging to do before we can begin to plant the new things. So that's kind of my indicator of when I kind of see if we're in a stagnated place in treatment.
Thank you, Ebony, for sharing more information about that. I think that's also a good reminder for having individualized services so that not every client is going to be put in the same, situation because everybody has their own individual journey that they're on. So thank you for that information. The next question is for Reagan, and that is talking about challenges. So what are some challenges that you have seen the most when people are working on their mental health and recovery?
Some challenges I've seen have been hopelessness, feeling like nothing's ever going to change, nothing's ever going to get better, they're never going to feel better. And that is such a heavy weight that it can really, it can make someone not just hopeless about their situation, but hopeless about their recovery also. Because, if you're in the tunnel and it's dark and you don't see a light anywhere, you're just walking like, how long am I supposed to walk in this darkness until I start to see some light? Setbacks and justice, that's a big one for my clients. If they're not getting justice, or if their abuser or offender was found not guilty, or not arrested at all or anything like that. If they don't feel like they got justice, um, that can kind of hinder their growth and their healing.
Yeah.
Also, people, I think, a lot of times are afraid of having to relive experiences that they've had by telling it again, by talking about it. And then also just lack of awareness, or not social, emotional awareness. Just not really knowing how they feel. That can be a big hindrance in our sessions, just because that's kind of the first thing. You don't really know what to treat, and where to go if you don't know where you're at now. So, but one thing I did want to add on to, when it comes to like the fear of reliving, is that I heard this from a therapist a long time ago, and it was really helpful for me. and for some of my clients, which is, if it didn't kill you then, it's not going to kill you now. And now by telling it, you're not reliving it, you're not going through it again, you're just telling the facts of it. And you survived it back then. This is a smaller percentage of what you went through emotionally. It's different, so it's not going to kill you now.
The next question is for you, Ebony, and that question is, how do you help a client understand it was not their fault and empower them to change their future? This is a really powerful question, so definitely want to hear what you have to say about that one, Ebony.
This is a really good one, actually. And the biggest thing that I try to keep in mind is simple. Really just continue to shine light on the truth, right? Because a lot of times they're so distorted when it comes to thinking, like the abuser may tell them all type of things, to give them fear and, abuse and different things like that. So as a therapist, here I am coming in to shine light on the darkness, right? And so continuing to be sure that we always, bring truth back to the forefront. And I always tell clients, one thing about truth is you can't fight it, right? And so it stands alone. And so beginning to affirm them, affirm, you can do it, you will do it, you will make it, you can do it, you will do it, you can make it. So beginning to begin to give them a new vocabulary, put something new in their ear, because think about it, a victim has so much negative stuff that they absorb from under the hand of an abuser. Is so much that they absorb, so much negativity. So as a clinician, you're coming in to begin to be positive and give give a positive outlook. So at first they may say, there's no truth in that. No, he told me this, or no, they told me that. And so as a therapist, you have to continue to fight it back and say, but the truth is this, right? The truth, I know you've been taught this, but the truth is actually this. And so even in that comes to challenging the thought process, right? We use CBT as a foundation, or I know I do a lot. And so it's a simple practice and I love it. And it pretty much just says challenge the thought, change the behavior. And so we have to continue to challenge the thought until the behavior changes, right? And so you have to kind of work it, as I say, just work it until it begins to work.
Yeah.
And so that's my perspective on how to deal with matters as such.
There's something I'd like to add to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to telling a client it wasn't their fault, it's a lot harder. You can't just say, "Oh, it wasn't your
Right.
fault," because it's like, why not? Tell me why not? Because I believe that, and my body believes it, because I've been told that over and over again. So I tend to, in that case, we talk about their childhood, and we go through ACE scores, which is adverse childhood experiences. You could go into the research of that, but basically ACE scores tell you how you were set up for the abuse that you may have experienced later on in life. If you have a 3 or more on that assessment, you're more likely to experience adverse adult experiences. And so kind of taking them back to their childhood, talking about the abuse they may have suffered back then, the negative experiences they may have suffered back then, that kind of normalized those things for them. Not that in their mind they thought they were normal, but they were just exposed to it, and so it's not quite as shocking to them as it would be to somebody who'd never experienced that in childhood when they're adults. So kind of going back and showing them, like, these are things that you could not control about your life that led you into these experiences now today. That's why it's not your fault.
Yeah, that's really good, Reagan. And what do you recommend, Reagan, for those that are considering counseling?
Some advice I would give is shop around. There's me and Ebony, and we also have another part-time therapist for our human trafficking victims at the shelter, but that's just 3 of us, in the world of therapists. And we are not for everybody. Ebony and I are pretty different in the way that we do therapy. But neither of our ways may fit or suit somebody. So you don't need to find a therapist and stick with them forever. just because you feel like you can't, not all therapists are the same, and not all therapists are going to do the same things or have the same training or have the same style. So it's important that you find somebody that kind of jives with you in that way. It's also a process, and this is one thing that I just wish everybody knew coming into therapy is that your therapist is not going to fix you. That's not their job.
Yeah.
Right.
Their job's to give you the tools to help you find some tools that may be helpful for you, and then it's your responsibility to implement those tools.
Right.
So just seeing a therapist is not gonna do much of anything if you're not willing to put in the work also
Yeah.
yourself.
Right. Right.
That's good. The next question is for Ebony. This one's more towards, what your sessions typically look like, how they're structured. So if somebody's coming in for the first time, what can they expect from one of your sessions and what that would look like for them?
Kind of piggybacking off of what Reagan said, each therapist is different. We have our own style, right? So, for me, I know a lot of times I take more of a relaxed, person-centered approach. So, as they come in each session, I don't jump straight into, well, let's talk about what we talked about last time, right? A lot of times I'll kind of like check the box. How's home? How's, work? How are the basic things of your life? Because sometimes what we discover is, which I know I've done it, where I go straight in and say, well, let's start where we stopped, right? Let's go right in, and I could have missed something that was going on in that present moment, right? Like they could have had an incident at work or a setback in the grocery store, so I like to kind of give them that I call it the soothing foundation, right? So we just kind of soothe it, and kind of work it in. And then I begin to kind of, usher them into treatment, or kind of, and I always will tell them too sometimes, because sometimes I know as a therapist, I'm like, like, let's go in, let's, we're here for treatment. But I always say, if I'm doing too much or if I'm giving you too much to chew, tell me. So I give the client permission to stop and say, Ebony, that's a bit much today, right? And so in that, you're still building rapport. You're getting to learn your client is getting to learn you. And even if you had to challenge them or you put something big on the table, as you're beginning to like build them up to this, that you can prepare them for the big stuff, right? Because you've kind of tested and tried as you worked your way up. And so, and I always tell them, as I kind of approach is that, here in my office, we just flow. Okay, we don't. It's. I know. I have some structure to it, but we call it the flow, right? And so, clients come in. It's more of that relaxed approach that I take. Still with modalities in mind, still being sure that I'm on point as a therapist, but as the client, they come in like, this is like my homegirl, and so that's the desire that, or the image that I want them to see when they see me, or get that vibe as they come into therapy with me. So that's kind of what my therapy sessions would kind of look like overall, or feel like.
Awesome. And then we're getting down to the last question here. It'll be for both of you guys to kind of share a little bit about it. We'll get started with Reagan, and that question is, what are some final thoughts you would like to share with those who have survived a traumatic experience?
I think I'd like to start with you're not broken or damaged goods. You're wounded. You were wounded, and all wounds can heal. Some may take longer than others, and some may take more work. Some you may have to do surgery on and dig out some rotten flesh. It's kind of a gross analogy, but sometimes you got to dig around and it's painful. But on the other side is true healing, where there's not any, there may be a scar there, but there's nothing, it's not infected. It's not affecting you anymore. You still see it and you have it there as a memory, but it's not causing problems for you daily. And then also don't be afraid to share your story. It may help someone else to talk about theirs if you're open. Um, I had a therapist too one time to tell me that vulnerability invites vulnerability. So if you're vulnerable, it invites others to be vulnerable with you. But you also, on a different side of the same coin, you don't need to share it with everybody. You don't need to blast it on social media. You don't need to share it with every single person that you come across in your life, because not all of those people are safe. Your story is precious, your story is valuable, and it's an honor to hear it. I know Ebony and I are both honored to be able to hear the stories that we hear, because it's such sensitive information, and it's such just powerful information and powerful
Yeah.
knowledge about our clients' lives, that, you know, it's an honor for both of us to be able to hear that stuff. But um we are trained to handle it with care, and not everybody is trained in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think share your story, but also be careful of who you share it with, because you know, it's, or at least um have the necessary support around you if you're going to share your story, to be able to then bolster you up. That
I love how Reagan put it when it comes to just honor. I was thinking, for a victim, for an overcomer at that point, I would say wear your badge of honor, right? Wear your healing, wear that badge that says I overcame. Because some victims don't. So everybody doesn't get to the part where they can say, I overcame that, right? Some fall by the wayside, some go back, some succumb to drugs, alcohol, and they never make it out. But some people do make it out. So if you're one of those that has made it out, then wear that, right? Because just like Reagan said, vulnerability invites vulnerability. A healed person could invite a person to be healed, right? And so we have to, encourage clients, and I always say empower them, to really go beyond us, keep going, because we dropped a seed for you, and we allowed it to grow, but now it's your turn to drop a seed, right? And so another person can grow into the next phase of their lives. And so just encouraging them to really participate in self-care, because sometimes we're like, self-care is getting our hair done and getting our nails done. That's a part of it, but therapy is real. That's true self-care, right? And so being an active participant, as Reagan said, to really get to a place of healing, that's self-care. So inviting others to really take the journey, don't be ashamed of the journey, but also be careful as you begin to share your journey, right? Just like Reagan said. So I think between what Reagan and I said, we can kind of take it and run with it. So that's my response to that question, Nikki.
I just love what y'all said, what both of y'all said about vulnerabilities, opening up to vulnerabilities, because that's where it starts, right? That's where healing begins. And I'm really glad that we were able to discuss such important information, and hopefully it covered some understanding to anyone who might be watching about counseling services here at the Center for Violence Prevention. This is just, a general Q&A, but we're here at any time to answer any questions through our social media platforms or our website, which is msc4vp.org. Our phone number is 601-932-4198. And we also have a text now line that's available 24/7. If you're in a situation and you don't really want to talk on the phone and you just want to send a quick text, that's 601-954-1724. And of course, send us a message on social media. We're always here and willing to talk to you guys. We have therapists, as you can see here, who are also waiting to talk to you about your healing journey. So thanks again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed this video.